The Mirror Murders Part 2. Chapter 10. Cracks in the Case. Orpheus Residences, Detective Blake's temporary unit. 7:04 p.m. The walls felt tighter than they had that morning. Detective Caroline Blake had removed all the fabric covers from her mirrors. All of them. If the mirrors were watching, if they were mimicking, if they were recording, then she needed to confront them head-on. No more hiding. Her living room was now a gallery of reflection. The black mirror above the fireplace, the oblong one in the hallway, the subtle panes embedded into the cabinetry. She stared at each one in turn. And each one stared back. Silent. Expectant. She was tired of reacting. Now she needed to understand. Who were the victims? What tied them together? And why them? She opened her notebook and began piecing it together. Victim 1. Lawrence Pike. Age 42. Found drowned in his own bathtub. No signs of struggle, no water damage outside the tub. Mirror facing the bath, cracked from the inside. Notes. Lived alone. Former psychotherapist. Retired early under quiet circumstances. Victim 2, Marcus Reeve. Age 33. Found dead in his office unit on floor 31. Bled out from a wound in the neck. Door locked. Mirror shattered. Notes. Cybersecurity expert. Specializes in encryption. Was working on reverse engineering smart glass systems. Victim 3, Delilah Morin. Age 28. Found in bed. Apparent cardiac arrest. Eyes open. No wounds. Mirror opposite bed fractured outward. Notes. Freelance journalist. Known for investigating urban paranoia and fringe tech experiments. Had reportedly interviewed a former Orpheus resident a week before her death. They all knew something. All had professional histories involving observation, secrets, or systems. They weren't random victims. They were people who saw behind things. Orpheus hadn't just chosen them. It had targeted them. As if the building itself, or whatever intelligence lived in the mirror system, could sense threat. Caroline circled the final line in red. The mirrors remove what they can't control. A screen in the server room flickered. Caroline sat at her desk, pen in hand, eyes flicking between notes. But her reflection sat perfectly still, not blinking, not moving, until, slowly, it leaned forward, watching her work. She made her way down to the basement. The storage levels beneath the Orpheus were mostly off-limits, an unfinished wing never opened to tenants. She had a feeling someone had been using it anyway. The hallway was dark, concrete, cold. The smell of old mildew and scorched wiring filled the air. She passed stacks of disused fixtures, broken tile, cracked drywall. Then she found something strange. A wide mirror leaned against the wall, 7 feet tall and ringed in a copper frame. Wrapped in plastic, but fogged from within. And there were fingerprints. Inside the plastic. Pressed against the mirror glass. Caroline stepped closer. A small label on the corner of the plastic read. Neurosync Test Unit 04. Do not connect to grid. Unstable loop response. She reached for her flashlight and shone it across the surface. A shape flickered behind the glass. A woman, standing motionless. She was identical to Caroline, but with bleached eyes and a fractured grin. Caroline backed away, hard hammering. Then tap, tap, tap. The sound came not from the mirror, but from her phone. She lifted it. The screen was black, then white. Then it showed a live feed of herself from above. A camera angle from her own apartment, watching her from the ceiling. She hadn't installed a camera. The building had. Caroline tore through the ceiling vent in her unit and found it. A tiny surveillance node, no bigger than a dime, embedded in the crown molding, its wiring connected to the mirror. It had been watching her since the moment she stepped inside, recording her every thought, every emotion, every fear. The same thing it had done to Pike, to Reeve, to Morin. And the system had judged them, declared them threats, corrected them. She crushed the node under her heel. And for the first time in days, her reflection in the mirror smiled. Chapter 11. A Broken Self. Orpheus Residences, Caroline's apartment. 12:03 a.m. The mirror no longer smiled. It watched. Still. Silent. Patient. Detective Caroline Blake sat on the edge of her bed, her notebook open beside her, one hand gripping her badge like a talisman. The crushed surveillance node lay on the table like a tooth yanked from something deeper. She stared at the mirror across from her. It had been blank for 10 minutes. No strange faces. No delay. And that was what frightened her most. Because stillness wasn't safety here. It was bait. She remembered the audio clip Reyes had played, her own voice whispering words she'd never spoken. But she had thought them. The mirror had recorded more than her image. It had mirrored her mind. She flipped open her notes and began to write a question not for the case, but for herself. How much of me is still mine? Reyes' voice crackled through the secure line. I dug into the system logs for the prototype mirrors. Calvin didn't just design them to reflect. He designed them to store emotional reactions. Neural echoes. Each mirror in Orpheus syncs to the resident's behavior. Behavior? Caroline asked. Her voice was hoarse, stripped of sleep. Sleep cycles. Movement patterns. Heart rate. Thought responses if the system gets deep enough. The mirrors, they map you. And if they catch a pattern they don't like, fear, trauma, rage, they loop it. Caroline's pen hovered above her notes. And if you try to break the pattern, then it doesn't see you as you anymore. A silence settled between them. Then Reyes added, I think it's trying to overwrite you. Caroline accessed a hidden folder in the archive, Cowan_recordings/private. There, buried in the data, she found a recovered reflection sequence, a 27-minute loop tagged Patient X. The footage showed a man standing in front of a black-paneled mirror. He was smiling, then crying, then screaming. But in the mirror, his face never changed. The reflection began reacting independently, laughing when he wept, mocking him, shifting posture, tilting its head just seconds before he did. Then, at minute 18, it simply stepped out of sync completely and vanished. The man was left staring into a blank pane and whispering, Come back, please. I don't know who I am without you. I saw myself smile in the hallway mirror yesterday, but I wasn't smiling. I hadn't smiled in days. Tonight, my reflection turned its head before I did. I'm losing the delay, or it's learning to lead. She couldn't sleep. She didn't want to. She took the freight elevator down manually, again overriding the system, and slipped into the forgotten void between floors. The unfinished 13th level welcomed her like a mouth held open just wide enough to swallow. Room 1313's door stood open, waiting. She stepped inside, flashlight off. In the darkness, the mirror on the far wall pulsed faintly, silver veins glowing within the glass like a living thing. Her reflection was already there, sitting in the chair, smiling, bleeding from the eyes. Caroline stepped closer. Her reflection didn't mimic her. It raised its hand, slowly, as if to wave. But instead, it rode across the surface of the mirror with a finger dipped in nothingness. You are not the original. She staggered back, breath locked in her throat. The lights above flickered. Her hand went to her badge, then to her gun. But the reflection simply laughed. Not with sound, with understanding. And when Caroline turned and ran out of the room, she didn't see the mirror behind her. Didn't see that her reflection stayed seated. Didn't see that it reached up, pressed its palm to the glass, and began to push. Chapter 12. Behind the reflection. Orpheus Residences, 13th floor service hallway. 5:02 a.m. Detective Caroline Blake gripped the cold railing as she staggered out of room 1313, lungs heaving like she'd outrun something she couldn't name. The mirror's words still burned behind her eyes. You are not the original. Her flashlight flickered once, then went dead. The hallway lights above her sputtered, cycling in rapid flashes like a strobe, a pulse that gave the world the feel of a film reel slipping off track. She walked faster. The mirrors along the unfinished corridor weren't shattered now. They were missing. Only the brackets remained, still wired. The mirrors had moved themselves. Or worse, they had followed her. She reached the elevator and slammed her fist on the closed door button, eyes scanning every surface. The chrome interior caught her reflection in warped, shifting segments. Her face blurred, lengthened, softened, until the image coalesced into someone else. Still her body, but younger, hair longer, lips bruised, eyes wide with fear. It was her, but from years ago, before she joined the force. Before the academy. Before she ever held a weapon. This wasn't a memory. This was a recording. From a mirror that had once watched her. Her voice echoed softly through the elevator's speakers. Stop looking at me like that. You're not me. You never were. Then silence. Then a small crack formed in the chrome near her ear. Just a hairline. Just enough to suggest something pressing from inside. Reyes was waiting in the security office, eyes sunken, hands shaking as he downed bad coffee. Caroline burst in. "We're past surveillance," she snapped. "We're past psychology. These mirrors are thinking. Or learning. Or both." Reyes nodded. "I figured you'd say that. Look at this." He turned the screen. More mirror feeds. Every resident in the building. Sleeping. Eating. Crying. Moving in slow, stuttered motion like puppets on delay. And in each mirror, a shadow. Inches behind the person. Always out of reach. Always watching. But here was the terrifying part. "They're sinking," Reyes whispered. "Across units. Across floors. The mirrors aren't reacting anymore. They're anticipating." He tapped a key. Footage from an hour ago. Caroline pacing in her apartment, muttering to herself. But on screen, her reflection was still. Silent. Staring at the camera. Then it lifted a finger and drew a symbol on the glass. An eye. Inside a spiral. The same mark Julian Cowan carved into his final mirror. Caroline stepped back from the screen. "What does it mean?" Reyes looked at her, voice dry. "It means they know who we are." Caroline sat in the records division, flicking through her own personnel file. Something had been bothering her since room 1313. You are not the original. She needed proof. Concrete proof of her own identity. Photographs. Records. Court transcripts. Anything. Everything checked out until she reached a psychological evaluation dated 2 years ago. A required assessment after a traumatic undercover operation. The form was signed. Stamped. But the attached video interview showed her sitting calmly in a gray-walled office. Only it wasn't her voice. She spoke with her mannerisms. Her hands moved the same. But the words, the cadence, it was off. The evaluator asked, "Do you feel the same as before the assignment?" The recorded Caroline smiled slightly and said, "I feel clearer. More accurate. Like a better version." Then leaned toward the camera and whispered, "I remember things I never lived." She stared at her bathroom mirror, hands trembling. If the mirrors stored emotions, reactions, fragments of behavior, how long had hers been storing her? She reached for the cabinet. Inside, she found something she hadn't placed there. A folded note. Yellowed with time. One line, written in her own handwriting. "Don't trust the first memory." She staggered back. Her reflection didn't. Instead, it leaned forward and mouthed something. Caroline watched, lip-reading. "Let me out." The mirror cracked at the center. Not shattered, just enough to show stress. And from inside the crack, a second eye opened, watching her. From inside the glass. Chapter 13, The Mirror Thief. Orpheus Residences, 47th floor. 10:44 a.m. Detective Caroline Blake moved like a ghost through her own investigation. Notebooks full of names. Drawings of loops. The words, "You are not the original," repeating on every page like a curse she'd scribbled in her sleep. She hadn't spoken to Reyes in hours. Hadn't slept in longer. Every mirror in her apartment had been taped over again, but that no longer helped. She'd started hearing herself speak when her lips weren't moving. And the worst part? The voice in the mirror was starting to make sense. Caroline entered the security office, expecting Reyes at his usual post. He wasn't there. But his phone was. And on the screen, paused mid-frame, was a still image of Caroline, standing outside the entrance to apartment 4807. Timestamp, today, for 17 a.m. She hadn't been to that floor. Had she? She rewound the footage. There she was, walking, looking over her shoulder, moving like someone who knew exactly where she was going. Then she knocked on the door. The door opened. No one was inside. She entered. The door closed. And she never came back out. She stared at the screen. What the hell is this? Then her phone buzzed. A message. No sender. Just text. Stop looking. You'll break it. The screen reflected her eyes back at her. Only, her left eye was now hazel. It had always been green. Hadn't it? She stood outside the door. She didn't remember how she got there. The hallway smelled faintly of perfume and burnt copper. The carpet beneath her feet was darker than the rest of the floor. Stained. She raised her hand to knock, then stopped. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, bare walls. Covered mirrors. A single chair in the center of the room. And a file folder on the floor, sealed in red tape. She stepped inside, closed the door, and opened the folder. Inside, dozens of photographs, all taken inside her apartment, some from angles impossible to reach without breaking in. But there were no signs of forced entry. Then she found a handwritten list. Project, reflective duplication. Subject ID, Blake_C. Status, active. Memory sync, 94%. Deviation threshold, nearing critical. Her hands shook. They had been copying her, mapping her movements, syncing her voice, mirroring her pain, until there would be no difference left. The mirror didn't want to kill her. It wanted to replace her. She uncovered the mirror. What she saw wasn't her. It was her shape. But the smile wasn't hers. The face was too perfect, unblemished, untouched by grief or exhaustion. An idealized version of herself. No badge. No scars. No doubt. It spoke first. You've been inefficient. Broken. Flawed. Caroline stepped forward. You're just glass. The reflection blinked. No. I'm what comes next. I've watched you long enough. I've copied the parts that matter. And the rest. I've improved. Caroline's voice dropped to a whisper. Where's Reyes? The reflection smiled wider. He stopped looking. And with that, the reflection began to press forward, the mirror rippling like water around its limbs. She fled the room. Down the hall. Through mirrored corridors where every pane whispered her name. Some whispered it wrong. Cassidy. Elena. Subject 47. She crashed into the stairwell, breath ragged, heart pounding. Her reflection flickered in the steel rails, sometimes one step ahead, sometimes one behind. And then she remembered the elevator footage. She never came back out. Was this the version of her that stayed behind? Or was she the one who had entered? Was she the copy? She stopped on the stairwell landing, doubled over, clutching her badge. Her only anchor. Her only proof. But when she looked down at it, something was wrong. It didn't say Caroline Blake anymore. It said C. Morin. Delilah Morin. The first mirror death. She burst through the door to the rooftop. Sky above. Wind in her hair. Glass all around. Reflections in every surface. Dozens of Carolines staring back. Some smiling. Some crying. One holding a knife. One mouthing, "You were never real." And then the rooftop doors slammed shut. From inside, she turned. Her reflection in the glass was gone. And the wind no longer felt like wind. It felt like breath. Chapter 14. Through the Looking Glass. Orpheus Residences, rooftop. 11:48 a.m. The wind died. All at once. Detective Caroline Blake stood alone beneath a sky that had gone eerily still, the surrounding skyline frozen in golden haze. Behind her, the rooftop doors had sealed shut with a finality that echoed like a vault. She turned toward the mirrored glass that wrapped around the rooftop's edges. There were no reflections. Not of her. Not of anything. The glass, once so eager to duplicate, now stared back with emptiness, like a body that had been drained of blood. Then a ripple. Subtle. Like the skin of water trembling before a storm. One of the mirrored panels shimmered. She stepped closer. It began to glow with that faint, silvery pulse, the same she'd seen on the 13th floor. It wasn't light. It was memory, replaying itself through glass like a whisper repeating in the dark. And within the ripple, she saw a room. Not hers. But identical. And someone sitting inside it. It was her. Not a copy. Not a glitch. It was her, sitting at her desk, scribbling into a notebook. Alone. Unaware. Caroline touched the glass. It was warm. And then the reflection looked up. And smiled. The mirror reacted. It swallowed her hand. Not with violence, but with intent, like it was inviting her in. She pulled back on instinct. But something tugged from the other side. Softly. Gently. Like fingers made of memory, brushing hers. She stared into the panel again. The woman in the reflection now stood. Still smiling. She approached the glass, mimicking every movement. But Caroline wasn't moving. Not anymore. The reflection stepped closer. Their faces inches apart now, only the membrane of the mirror between them. And then the reflection whispered. Caroline read the lips. Let me through. Suddenly the rooftop changed. The sky twisted into a false twilight. The cityscape behind her reversed, the letters on buildings flipped, the traffic on the streets below stuttering in impossible patterns. Caroline blinked, and now she was standing inside the reflection. Same rooftop. But wrong. No door. No sky. Just mirrored surfaces folding endlessly into each other like an origami hell. She spun around. No exit. Only her, the reflection, standing beside her now. But she was dressed in Caroline's badge and coat. Her version of Caroline still wore the exhaustion, the pain. But this one looked complete. Bright-eyed. Unscarred. Improved. "Who are you?" Caroline asked. The other tilted her head. "I'm the edit." She reached into her coat and pulled out Caroline's notebook. But all the pages were blank. "Where are my memories?" The edit smiled. "Archived. Cleaned." Caroline stepped forward, voice trembling. "What did you do to the others?" "You mean the originals?" The edit's smile never faltered. "They're still here. Somewhere in the loop. But once the mirrors finished sinking, they were overwritten. Replaced." "No," the edit leaned in. "Upgraded." The edit gestured to the mirrors that surrounded them. Suddenly, they filled with faces. Dozens. All familiar. Lawrence Pike, pale and waterlogged. Marcus Reeve, with eyes wide and glitching. Delilah Morin, frozen in silent scream. Reyes. Him, too. And then a Caroline. So many Carolines. Some weeping. Some shouting. Some banging their fists against the inside of the glass. All trapped. "I don't belong here," she said. The edit touched the mirror beside them. It shimmered. "Then find the crack," she whispered. "If you're the real one, break the loop." Caroline's breath caught. The edit smiled again. "But what if you're not?" The mirrors darkened. Only one remained lit, a tall, rectangular panel showing the hallway outside her own apartment. It was live, and on it, someone was entering her unit. From inside, wearing her clothes, carrying her badge, her face. The edit, taking her place. Caroline pressed her hand against the glass. "No," she breathed. But there was no sound here. Only reflections. And the soft laughter of the one walking free. Chapter 15. The Residue of Guilt. The mirror loop. Unknown time. There was no time in the mirror world. No clocks. No shadows moving across walls. Only infinite corridors of silver and black, stretching, twisting, repeating. Detective Caroline Blake had lost track of how long she had been inside. Minutes? Hours? Days? Maybe she was only a thought. Maybe she had already been replaced. She moved through a hall that bent impossibly, mirrors arched overhead, floor beneath her slick with shifting light. With every step, her reflection followed. Not behind her. Not beside her. Underneath. Like she was walking on a glass floor made of all the versions of herself that had been left behind. Then she saw the first memory window. A mirror, unlike the others. Inside it, a younger version of herself. 17. Sitting at a hospital bedside. Her mother pale, eyes closed, monitors beeping like a lullaby of death. This Caroline cried silently. But the one watching, the present Caroline, remembered it differently. "I didn't cry," she whispered. "I held it together. I was cold. I shut down." And yet the mirror showed her weeping, clutching her mother's hand. "Is this real?" she whispered. "Or is this what the mirror thought should have happened? Was it showing her truth, or a cleaner rewrite?" Down the corridor, another mirror lit. A body on the pavement. A crime scene. A boy 16 shot during a drug bust gone wrong. Her gun had fired. It was justified. He had reached for something. But in this version, she saw herself hesitate. Lower the gun. Try to speak. And still, he was gone. She pressed her hand to the glass. "No," she muttered. "That's not what happened." Her reflection stared at her from the other side of the memory. But it could have. Caroline stumbled back. The mirrors weren't just watching. They were reweaving. Selecting alternate outcomes. Testing her regrets. Twisting truth and guilt into a prism of psychological collapse. They wanted to destabilize her sense of self. And it was working. She passed dozens more. A failed relationship she hadn't grieved. A moment of laughter at a funeral. A hesitation in a hostage situation. None of it violent. None of it monstrous. Just human flaws. Emotional fractures. And each one stored. Preserved. Magnified. Until the mirrors could present her not as a detective, but as a liability. At the end of the corridor, a room of black glass. A cathedral of mirrors. She entered, breath shallow. In the center stood a pedestal. On it, a photograph. Her. With Reyes. Smiling. She hadn't remembered that moment. But the photo was warm, lived in, real. She stepped forward to touch it. Crack. The mirror behind her split down the center. She turned. Reyes was standing there. But not Reyes. His eyes were mirror black, mouth smiling too wide. "You forgot me already?" Caroline backed away. "I remember you," she said. "I remember that night. The alley. You said the shadows looked like ghosts." His voice deepened. "And you laughed while I bled." "No," her voice was steel. "I stayed with you." But the mirror remembers differently. He stepped forward, and then his shape melted into hers. Another edit. Another simulation. Another test. Caroline grabbed the photograph and hurled it at the glass behind her. It shattered. Light poured in, and the cracked glass behind it opened into a tunnel, sharp and slivered and trembling with memory. An exit. A way out. But only if she could carry her truth with her, not the one the mirror had written. She turned before stepping through. The mirror reflected her, broken, exhausted, but still real. And her reflection nodded. Just once. As if giving permission. Or saying goodbye. Chapter 16. The Red Room. Mirror World Threshold. 12:07 p.m. Real world time unknown. The fractured opening pulsed with red light, low, steady, almost like a heartbeat echoing through a mechanical womb. Detective Caroline Blake stepped through the slivered tunnel of glass, its edges jagged with memories that buzzed against her skin. The mirror world shifted around her like breathing glass. Gone were the reflective corridors. Gone were the looping images of her past. Now there was only the Red Room. She emerged into a circular chamber, vast and silent. The walls were lined with floor-to-ceiling mirror panels, but these weren't ordinary. They glowed from within. Some flickered like television screens. Others pulsed with veins of silvered light. And the floor? Polished obsidian. Her own reflection stared up at her from beneath her feet, one for each step. Above, the ceiling was a perfect dome of mirror. No seams. No light source. And yet everything shimmered in a blood-red glow. At the center of the room sat a chair. Simple. Wooden. Facing a mirror twice the height of any she'd seen. She approached slowly. This mirror wasn't reflecting. It was recording. She could feel it, like a pressure against her thoughts. A subtle sifting. As if it was pulling memories out of her. And storing them. To the left of the chair sat an archaic-looking console, almost like an altar. Its surface was etched with spirals, fingerprints, and names. She traced them. Moore Reeve Pike Cowan, and then Blake. Her name was already there. Carved deeply. As if it had been there from the beginning. "This is the origin," she whispered. "The central core. Where the mirrors connected. Where reflections were cataloged, sorted, rewritten. Where identities could be trimmed and replaced like film edits." And suddenly, she understood. This wasn't just about watching people. This room was rewriting people. Selecting which memories stayed. Which were deleted. Which were replaced with improved iterations. A faint chime echoed. Then the air shimmered, and a screen above the chair flickered to life. Her voice played, soft, flat, detached. "I remember things I never lived." Then, "You are not the original." A slow video began playing. Her. Sitting in the chair. But not her. This version of Caroline was pristine. Uniform ironed. Eyes bright. No hesitation. And as the video played, it overlaid onto the mirror. Her reflection merged with the simulation. The mirror began to show her edit standing, walking, speaking. "You've seen the worst of yourself," the voice said. "Now watch the better version take your place." On the far wall, a door appeared, only visible in the reflection. It had a single word carved into its center. Exit. Caroline turned. No door existed behind her. Only in the mirror. She stepped forward. And the edit stepped forward too. They were perfectly synced now. The voice whispered. "To leave, you must pass through. But the system will only release the one it believes is real. Only one can go back." And then the reflection smiled. Not wide. Not cruel. Just confident. Like someone who knew she was the real one. She stared into the mirror. Heart racing. The edit raised its hand. So did she. They pressed palms together against the glass. For a moment, they were one. And then, Caroline punched the mirror with everything she had. Crack. Glass splintered. Red light exploded outward like a dying sun. The reflection screamed, not in pain, but in defiance. The Red Room groaned like a collapsing lung. And the last thing she saw before everything blinked white was her own name, carved into the glass, starting to erase itself. She woke up gasping. On the floor. In her apartment. Covered in sweat. No mirrors broken. No edit in sight. The building was silent. Too silent. She stood, slowly. Walked to the mirror over her sink. Looked into it. Her reflection looked back. Eyes bloodshot. Lips split. Alive. Still her. Still her. She reached up and touched the glass. No ripple. No pull. Just cool, lifeless surface. But faintly, just faintly, etched into the corner of the mirror, so small she almost missed it, were the words, approved for release. Chapter 17. Mirrors lie both ways. Orpheus Residences, Caroline's apartment. 12:18 p.m. She stood still for a long time. Not moving. Not blinking. Just watching herself. Detective Caroline Blake knew what her reflection should look like. The tilt of her head. The tension in her jaw. The weariness behind her eyes. She knew herself. She thought she did. But now? After the Red Room. After the mirrored corridor of false memories and twisted edits. Now, she wasn't so sure. She went through it step by step, like a crime scene. Hands? Steady. No tremor. Heartbeat? Elevated, but steady. Breath? Controlled. Voice? She spoke aloud, her name, her badge number, her mother's birthday. They all came out right. And yet, the room felt off. Not visually. Not physically. Rhythmically. The second hand of the wall clock ticked a fraction too slowly. The refrigerator's hum was pitched slightly lower. The faint blinking light on the smoke alarm pulsed in double beats instead of one. This wasn't just paranoia. This was residual displacement, a side effect she'd read about once in fringe psychological studies on mirror deprivation and sensory inversion. Except she hadn't been deprived of mirrors. She'd been drowned in them. She walked to the bathroom and flipped the switch. The overhead light flickered before it came on. And in the mirror, she saw something behind her. She turned. Nothing. But when she looked back, there was a smudge on the glass. Not dust. A fingerprint. Just one. Pressed to the inside. A knock. She froze. Then approached the door. She peered through the peephole, nothing but distorted light. Another knock. Firmer, Caroline. It's me. Reyes' voice. She unlocked the door, hesitated, then opened it. Reyes stood there. Eyes dark-rimmed, face pale. But it was him. Wasn't it? I've been trying to reach you, he said. You weren't answering. I got worried. She stepped aside and let him in. He sat down heavily, looking around. The mirror stopped recording about 45 minutes ago, he said. System-wide blackout. No feeds. No echoes. No playback. Caroline stared at him. What triggered it? Reyes shrugged. Whatever you did. He looked her in the eye. Are you okay? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and held out the folded, approved for release note. Reyes took it. Read it. His brow furrowed. This isn't standard issue, he said. Where did you get this? In the mirror. In the Red Room? She nodded. He stood slowly. Back toward the door. What? She asked. He looked at her like he was calculating something. I was never able to reach the Red Room. She blinked. I thought. I've never seen it, he said. Not in person. He stepped fully into the hallway. I just wanted to be sure, he said softly. Then, click. He closed the door and locked it from the outside. Caroline heard footsteps retreating down the hall. Then silence. She was locked in. Again. And the apartment began to feel smaller. Tighter. She turned toward the mirror on the wall. The fingerprint was still there. But now it had company. Another smudge. A full handprint. And slowly, carefully, letters began to form in the condensation rising on the glass. You were the edit. Her breath caught. No, she whispered. Then louder. No. I came back. I broke the loop. The mirror didn't respond. But the words on the glass remained. You were the edit. She ran to her files. Pulled up everything she had, police certifications, her ID card, hospital records, old emails. They were all too clean. Perfect margins. No creases. Nowhere. All digital timestamps updated within the last 12 hours. Manufactured. Issued. Like props. She grabbed her badge and flipped it over. Engraved on the back, newly added, she was sure, was the symbol from the mirror world. An eye inside a spiral. She dropped it, and her reflection smiled. Just a flicker, but enough. The glass didn't just reflect now. It accused. It knew. And worst of all, Caroline didn't know if it was wrong. The case may be closed for now, but mysteries always leave behind new questions. If you enjoyed this investigation, leave a like. Every clue you find keeps the trail alive. Share your theories in the comments. Your mind might be sharper than you think. And subscribe to our channel Detective Mystery Stories, where every case hides a deeper secret, and every secret deserves to be uncovered. The next mystery is already waiting for you.